Good afternoon, my Dungeon Boss brethren. It is another Fad Friday. Today we're going to be taking a look at Iris, who is a caster. We're going to do a little bit of a deep dive in terms of what she can do, how she can do it, and ultimately if you could or should use her. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into our hero roster. For comparison today, I am going to compare against a number of other casters just to give you a little bit of context in terms of what I'm actually looking at. For our purposes today, I am going to ignore Ponty and I'm going to ignore Gretel as well. Both of them are currently at 4 stars, so I was not able to get them to a comparable level. If we look at just the rest of our roster here, I have 3 stars and level 40 for a number of different heroes. Looking at just their base stats, there's a couple of quick disclaimers here. Not every one of these guys are fully ascended. With that said, I do have some projections in terms of what I expect to be the case for those that are not. But when we look at comparison, I will get to that in a little bit in terms of who's stronger than who and who's weaker than who and where they fall and where I might expect them to fall after they're all fully ascended and on the same level. That won't happen for quite some time in the future, at which point when I'm at max level for all of them, I will go back through and we will reanalyze these. But let's dispense with the comparisons for now, and let's actually talk about Iris a little bit and why I think she's an interesting hero and why she's got a lot of potential if she can see the light of day. Um, First off, she is a silver hero, so she's a smidge better than bronze. If we look at our casters, there's only a couple of bronze, so not really much in terms of bottom of the barrel. So she's not super powerful. She's not super weak. It's just a matter of what does she actually have. When we further get into her player sheet a little bit, if we look at her stats tab, as far as traits go, uh, truthfully, there's really nothing too much to write home about. Every time we play with meta heroes and super OP heroes, we're looking for that one trait or that one passive that just makes them totally broken or just, a guarantee to use every single time. Iris is a little bit different in that she is kind of plain Jane. She's your prototypical glass cannon for the most part. Now, she does have a couple of neat things, but nothing that's really truly game breaking in terms of using her. Certainly not for PvE. PvE, none of this stuff matters, even in the slightest. For PvP, we could see a little bit of utility. That's assuming that you are risky and willing to use her in PvP, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Um, so part of my first little piece here is in using Iris. Let's look at what she actually does. Can she survive? This first trait here is flying, so receives 25% less from melee attacks. That's important when we get into my demonstration a little bit later on, and one of the main points that I want to make as well. 25% less damage. That's a big deal. So that's a quarter of every attack that comes in that's melee attack is going to be reduced down. So in terms of other things that you'd see like chance to dodge or something like that, um, that's 25% is 25%. That's a pretty significant instance. One of her best starting traits here is the foresight. So she starts with 1 stack of foresight, which basically means that she gets a free debuff. So um, she can't be debuffed essentially. She can, but usually she'll get her first turn off without too much hassle. The next trait is Poe and Rogues, 25% extra damage to Rogue class. There are plenty of rogues out there, and there are some light rogues as well. Personally, this here is not a huge advantage for me. You're going to run into more than enough non-rogues that are just as dangerous. So while this is helpful, that is not going to make or break your fights, in my opinion. One of the things that can be extremely helpful, probably her marquee trait, is this immune to taunting and shrouded. Taunting, yes, big problem. Shrouded, often a bigger problem, especially when you use see light teams with Rayla shrouding everybody. That's usually a pretty big deal. I know you're thinking using Iris against a light team is kind of a suicide mission anyways. I want you to hold that thought for a little bit though. But the immune to taunt is great, especially for a caster or a glass cannon such as Iris, because that lets you pick and choose who you actually want to attack. I.e., we could attack Rayla or whoever we might want to. If it's a construct team, you might actually go against Bobble. Whatever the case, that is going to be very helpful. And lastly, her final trait is this purging up to 2 buffs from enemy targets. So when she attacks a target, she will remove their buffs from them, and then also self heals. So kind of unique to her. If you struggle with teams that buff each other, like those light teams, this here's kind of a win there when you do her basic attack. So from a trait standpoint, like I said, nothing totally game breaking. Not like Kira, for example, chance to do the whirly twirly deathwind thing at the end of every turn. I mean, those are things that you can't put a price on. Shouldn't have anything like that as far as you know marquee traits or anything. So for me, her best trait is likely going to be that combination of foresight, because you'll not be silenced on the first turn, as well as the eyes on the prize to be immune to taunting and shroud. Those are what you need is to do damage. Um, we're going to skip the stats for now because I want to talk a little bit about her stats compared to other casters and how she stacks up to them. So let's look at her abilities first. So abilities as a glass cannon, you might expect that all of her stuff is damage based. So first and foremost is Eyes of the Beholder. Basic attack, yeah, we don't really care about that. We're going to be using that primary number as a basis for what the skills do. So her base attack is 496. Great. Eyes of the Beholder in this case here does 719. That is just under 1.5 times amount the base attack. Reasonable, good quality for skill there. Um, Now, in addition to that, and doing damage, she gains one more stack of foresight. Again, that is going to prevent her from being silenced or hopefully anything else. Generally, we hope that it's to avoid a silence. Most other debuffs we're not really concerned with. Things like stun and silence, those are the ones that really cause problems for attackers. So the other nice thing about this one here, if you use it against a light team, for example, if the target's defeated, repeats the attack on a random enemy. So you get kind of a 2-for-1, similar to what Assassinate does. So this is kind of like an Assassinate skill, maybe with just not quite as much damage. For anybody that's played for a while, Arcane Missile should be no stranger to anybody. It's just a ranged magical attack on a target and 3 random enemies. So this one does 272, which is just about 50% of base damage. It's going to hit 4 people, so zero point 0.5 times 4 is 2. So the ultimate plus here is 2 times the amount of damage as a regular base attack. So that's actually more than Eyes of the Beholder. Unfortunately, you don't get to control where it goes. Great for boss fights because you're going to hit all 4, or if it's a smaller fight and you've already killed a couple of people. So, on top of that, the cooldown is only 2 turns. So this can be used quite a bit compared to 4 turns. So uncontrollable, but higher frequency. And last but certainly, definitely most certainly not least, is the Annihilation Beam. This is her marquee ability. It is 1289. This is a whopping 2.5 times her base damage. On top of that, if you use this in a boss fight with a solo boss, no ads or anything like that, you get a bonus 3 times damage to the target. It's unlikely you're ever going to see that in PvP. It's probably not going to happen where you're going to end up with Iris in there. Certainly not long enough to get her to use this attack, and definitely you're not going to be against the last remaining defender. So more for a PvE environment, and on top of that, it's got a massive 6-turn cooldown. So if you survive in PvP for over 6 turns with Iris, congratulations to you, but it's probably not going to happen too much. One other piece that I didn't mention in here is that it removes enemy corpses, not a big deal there, but it also can't be dodged. So somebody that's a little bit shifty and hard to hit, if you survive long enough to use this here, there's no dodging this one. So again, she will likely use this ability in PvE against bosses, um, but probably not so much in PvP. If you get it off in PvP, definitely screenshot it and show your damage because I'd like to see what it actually is. Now let's talk a little bit about stats. Where does she stack up in terms of usability? Speed is normal, nothing out of the norm there. Attack is 991. So 991, when we compare to our other heroes, her attack is actually quite high. So currently, out of all of my heroes right now, the only person with a higher attack at this level and stage here is Ignis at 1012. If we consider the expected results of fully ascending the few people that I did not ascend, what I'm expecting for her to, as far as her attack goes, will ultimately be dropped down quite a bit. So her attack is definitely not her strong suit. Again, we're going to get into that in just a moment or two. So while she is currently stronger than just about everybody I have right now, you take the likes of Jin, Inferno, Elrakis, Shade, Nibius, all of those guys are not fully ascended yet. Almost every one of those is going to pass her in attack. So um, great that she has the attack that she does, but she's certainly nothing super staggering with attack. Defense 781. As far as where that stacks up, her defense is actually the second highest. The only one that has a higher defense as of right now is Cobalt. Cobalt's defense is 791, which is only 10 higher. Once we consider everybody fully ascended, the projected results puts Cobalt, Iris, and Ignis all way towards the bottom in terms of defense. That was kind of to be expected. None of them are terribly strong, comparably speaking. We're also going to skip skill. We don't care about that because she's not a healer. But let's talk about max health. 3022. When I compare to everybody that I have right now, she stands alone as the only one with over 3,000. She is top out of all the casters that I have right now. After fully ascending, that does not change as well. There's still nobody that goes over 3,000 at this level. So health wise and defense wise, now it's starting to look like Iris is actually kind of handy, right? Because she has a lot of health and she has higher defense, making her survive a little bit. When we put them all together in terms of gross rankings, we say rank for the attack, defense, and max health. When I compare it to where she's at right now with everybody else, she is ranked number one across the board. So she is a total ranking points of 5. Cobalt is a ranking of 6 total points there for top 2. When we consider everybody fully ascended, the projections have Iris dropping down quite a few spots, mostly because her attack and defense, comparatively speaking, are just not quite as high. We see Zom take the top spot. Pretty handedly, actually. He's got a really nice attack as far as casters go. Mostly that's because he's slow. He also has relatively good health and defense, too, which is why he leads the pack in most of this stuff here. With that said, we want to see, okay, numbers are great, but what does this actually mean? So I got two little examples for you here. The first example that we're going to show is how Iris survives a Rayla team. Now, she doesn't actually survive, but I want to put up some number graphics for you to see that if we played this at level, and we played it properly with a solid team, she would survive. And then it's up to you to say, okay, Iris survives. How do I make the most of that? And I would love to hear what your thoughts going to be, knowing that Iris can survive at level against a Rayla team. What would you actually use to ultimately counter that team? So think about that. Put that in a comment if you will. The second video is just more so about how you'd actually use her attack. So when you want to actually use her Eye of the Beholder and do some attacks, that particular video is not at level. So take that for what it's worth. But I really want you to focus on what you see when she survives against a over-leveled Rayla team. That's the real takeaway that I want you to have today. So you can see this team is a level 43. That's higher than most of what I have. So they are over leveled, especially considering Iris is level 40. That's the big piece that I want you to observe today. So we'll use a few people that are at level and survivable, and we're going to leave Iris 3 levels under leveled against a powerhouse Rayla team. So the takeaway here, I want you to pay attention to the numbers. Iris has 3,022 health. The opening gambit from Rayla here, it's tough to see, but that number is 553. Then Jin comes in, does 857. Lorelei does 303. And then just barely killed by Black Widow here. She's going to do 1428. You can see that this, had Iris been at level, we would have had just a little bit more health, and we would have soaked that entire first round. Now at this point here, it's a matter of what do you actually do with the rest of this particular run, knowing that you're able to get Iris's attack off. My personal preference is something like Rayla and Kira there, for example, because you get some nice AoE. Throw in perhaps Dagon in there as well. One of the other things that I like to do is use Abigail, provided that they don't have too many fast heroes where you're not going to get a proper turn in with Iris. You still have to be cautious about how that works. But if you can get an Abigail in there, depending on the team you're going against, Abigail can then buff Iris. Iris can have a chance to get her kills off against that yellow team. Really, all you care about is killing Rayla, anyways. After that, game on. We can see that this team here is going to be a little bit underpowered compared to ours. Most notably in this instance, Rayla is out of order as well. So in terms of Rayla teams, this one is not nearly as dangerous as other teams. My guess is they're putting Zen first to get a block on somebody so that they're able to protect somebody's health. Unfortunately, I don't think that that really helps. I would always use Rayla first and not include Zen at all, but that's just me. And again, I'm a little bit more overpowered with them, but the idea is to show what a potential team could be versus a Rayla team. So we'll use our own Rayla combined with Kira and Dagon to do most of the damage here. The opening round here, ultimately Rayla just is used to break their shields. Her damage isn't super critical as it is. She's there for the proc, which is what we're going to see from Kira and Dagon here. So after Dagon does his maneuver, we're sitting in a pretty good spot here. Everybody is pretty much um, done deal. We can see that Rayla's already dead, so the damage is done. They don't get any more nice procs from there. Kira gets his actual turn. I use it on Lorelei here just to break her shield, and that will help me with using my Eye of the Beholder here. So I use that against Zen to kill any potential heals from Zen, and because I kill him, I get a double attack. Um, what I don't like is that I don't get a second freebie for killing Echo as well. So it looks like the proc is only good for one. I would have liked to see that proc be like Assassinate, where it keeps on going until it doesn't kill somebody. But that's neither here nor there. It's not the Assassinate proc, so it is what it is. But a little example of what you could use to beat a potential Rayla team. I've been workshopping it for a couple of weeks. Thank you for watching, and remember, I make YouTube videos for the American working man, because that's what I am, and that's who I care about.